Welcome to the Play Create podcast. I'm Kirsten Gunnerud.
And I'm Jill Johnson.
This is a place to explore play and creativity.
It is, and this is where we come together and we play and create forward, which means that we give momentum to our ideas and our thoughts that have been kind of keeping us up every night.
Yeah, in every aspect of life, work, parenting, you name it, there's no place we won't go and explore.
And when it gets down to it, we just want to have fun.
I am so excited to have you, Jill Shroyer, with me today. Jill is from Expedition HR. And one of the things I really appreciate and love about Jill is her approach to human resources, which is really focused on the human side of our amazing resource that we all have and we all bring to the work that we do. In the human beingness of human resources, the creativity that human beings bring, the compassion, empathy, the emotions, the feelings, the gratitude that we can bring to our work, and how good you are at helping organizations and companies and people, employees, or even probably the contractors that these companies work with, really focus in on how you can co-create together to create something pretty amazing. And what I really want to focus on today with you, if you're up for this, is so you've got that gift and that side and that beautiful thing that you bring, and yet we're in the midst of probably one of, if not the greatest challenge that almost every business, every company, every organization has maybe faced in this lifetime. And so to just explore a little how we can take that understanding of humanness and this really challenging time that we're in and explore what that can mean for employers, for employees, for people working with these organizations, and just how we think about it and how we look at it and how we can help create forward and co-create together in this really new and interesting time.
I love that. Well, I love how you obviously have built the podcast on play, create, forward, and the word create, it keeps coming up. And I love that in the workplace, because I think employers and employees both have the power to create so many things. They can create more gratitude. They can create just positivity. And I think you can choose to create as an employer and employee. And when I was thinking about this, a lot of the things aren't just a responsibility of, say, the employer, such as gratitude. Employers, of course, not just during COVID, but normally should thank their employees just a regular Tuesday. Thanks for coming in today. Sometimes you take people back a little bit by thinking, well, I have to be here. It's my work. Well, thanks for being here. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here. And it always surprises me how people will say, well, why would I say that? I think, why wouldn't you? But now, and also employees, thank your employer. We're all, you've heard the expression everywhere, we're all going through this together. We're all in this together. Well, we are, and not saying that anyone's doing it perfectly, but I would love employees to kind of give their employers a break too. They're learning, they're navigating, they're doing their best. They might say, gosh, we're open, we need you to be here. And so kind of the employee being kind of grateful for, thanks for trying, thanks for navigating these uncharted waters of COVID on a daily basis.
Yeah. But, it's interesting I just saw something that I thought was a really interesting thing to keep in mind, which is we keep talking about how we're all in this together. And it said, yes, we're all in the same storm, but we're not necessarily all in the same boats.
Yes.
And that was such an important distinction, I think, because, and this is where, again, that empathy, that compassion, that gratitude maybe come in, is recognizing that the boat that your employer in is a little different than the boat the employee is in. They're doing everything they can, depending on the situation, to save the business maybe, or to keep the business functioning because it's going off the rails, because for whatever reason that business is critical right now and serving people on maybe a scale that they hadn't before. And now they've got to figure that out. So the employees are trying to help support them in that as they go. But we are all in the same storm, but we are in different boats. And so how can one boat better communicate with the other?
Exactly. No, that I think that is the key with communication too. A part of what I always stand behind is communication. Everyone knows we can all be better communicators. Employers can be better communicators. I've been asked by people, well, there's things I can't communicate. I can't say, oh, we're doing this merger, or I can't talk about salaries. And I say, yes, but you can communicate even that you can't communicate something. That is still communication. And another piece of communication is not just saying what it is or the thing that's changing. Why? Give people a little bit of reason. It builds trust. But again, kind of like gratitude, gratitude should always be in the workplace. But right now, in employers, for example, an employer that comes in and employees say, gosh, am I going to have a job in a week? My family's really concerned. The employer should say, I don't know. I would like to say, yes, I don't know. I am going kind of day to day. I'd like to give you more reassurance, but let me tell you a little bit about maybe what they can say about what's going on. Here's what I've heard. Here's about May 1st, more businesses are opening. I think we'll be able to do more service. Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know. Kind of flows into transparency.
Yeah.
Kind of like just pillars of good employee-employer communication. I think they're really being held to the test right now.
Absolutely. And I think on the employee side too, not being afraid to ask those questions, not being afraid to, instead of just sitting in your bubble of concern or worry or wondering. And a lot of those questions probably can't get answered right now. But what we do when we don't ask is we start making up stories, and we start coming up with the answers we think, or we take something someone else said and it turns into this big thing that may or may not actually be true. And so really having that courage to ask those questions and not be afraid to invite those conversations, even if you're not in a leadership position, I think can also be a powerful thing to invite the whole organization to start, communicating.
Yes, that's so true in life. Just you jump to a conclusion. I know I do it.
Yeah.
If I assume something's going to happen one way and it doesn't, I immediately have a story about why that is, and without even stopping to say, let's step back. And so I've kind of been training myself a little more. I love that, the idea of stories. And exactly, is the future. No one knows the future. You brought up something though that I thought of too, is remember kind of going back to like empathy, and your employer also is worried probably that them physically as a human about getting it, as are you, the employee. What I think is, I love to use the word interesting about the virus. I don't like to say, and I also I'm careful with the words I use, scary, risky. I don't like those words. I like interesting, because I think it is interesting that the whole world is going through this. Yeah. And, in the past, if there's just a crisis or a conflict or something, typically it's isolated and you can kind of think, oh, that's really too bad. You have empathy and you feel for those people, but you turn around and you go about your day. And right. Here we are really all going through this. So that's just, and you said multiple levels of the organization too. I think everyone can say, I can actually relate.
I love that you use the word interesting. I think that is an aha for everyone, for me, and hopefully for a lot of people listening to this, because when we put certain words against things, those words also help create a story. Yes. And help them maybe be bigger than they have to be or smaller than they have to be. Interesting is a great creative word, because we can explore interesting. Mm-hmm. We can work with interesting.
It's really fascinating to be part of this, to say I lived through the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, and we are going to be telling grandkids, kids, if they don't remember it, we're going to be telling people about this, and we lived through it. We remember, we're in it, but I think that's almost a privilege to have lived through something like this.
Yeah. And my belief, right or wrong, my belief wholeheartedly is that it's challenges like this that are the opportunity to step up into our best selves, to learn, to grow in ways that we might not if we didn't have that challenge presented to us. And so my invitation to everyone through this has been find what that opportunity is. And even if it seems like everything is falling apart, or nothing's working right, or there is an opportunity.
Nice.
And if you're focused on the stuff that isn't working, it's going to be really hard to see it and to find it. And a lot of times we don't see it right away. It's something we baby step our way into. And before we know it, all of a sudden we have a solution that we didn't know we had until we took 10 baby steps instead of the first one.
Yeah, you cultivate what you focus on, or I don't know what the expression is.
Yeah.
But absolutely, I picture like a garden. You know, you leave your tomatoes because they're not coming in right and they're frustrating you, and you just kind of push them aside and you think, I'm going to focus on these because they're, you know, they're growing as they should without any help. But then, yeah, I think that expression is really poignant now, because if you're focusing on one thing,
yeah,
you will not receive the other thing. I've seen it in my life. I know it works like that. One thing you mentioned too, Kirsten, was when you said communication and talking is a form of communication. It's definitely like the conduit to communicate better is through talking. Yeah. So conduit, I didn't say the word right. And also too, when you're communicating, I think something so powerful, and there's a lot of buzz, which I don't like the buzzword, but I like what it means, is about authenticity out there. Yeah. You know, just if, you know, kids bust into a meeting or something, there's definitely that power in being vulnerable, being authentic. And right now, you know, managers or owners of businesses, if they're feeling uncertain or scared, say it. Say it to your people, because there's probably someone out there that wants to say, me too. Maybe we can just sit down and talk through this, because like you said, the lack of words, the lack of communication is what is really detrimental. And I know talking through it, and I didn't start off thinking this was interesting. I started off thinking it was terrifying. And, you know, we all went into shelter in place, you know, the lockdown, and wow, this is scary that I don't want to go to stores. And then I started thinking, but how fascinating. How are they going to start, you know, opening businesses? And I'm really fascinated by it. And it's kind of interesting how shelter in place has slowed things. And it just got extremely interesting. But again, I digress a little bit there, but
what I love about that interesting idea is, for people who've listened to us for a while and who know Rob, who is the author of the launch pad that we use at Rocket Trike of let go, notice more, and use everything, is what helps us get to everything's an opportunity. In our conversations with him, one of the things that he talks about is another way to look at this is, okay, this is what's on the table. What can I do with this? And what I love about calling this interesting is it makes it much easier to look at what's on the table and say, okay, what can we do with this? What's here? What can we do with this?
Yes.
And we can do a lot with it. And people are doing amazing things. I don't know if it's despite, because of, with whatever, this whole thing, this time, this situation, and you know, there's a lot of hard stories. A lot of the media certainly is focused on the really negative ones, unfortunately, but there's some amazing stories of how people, employers, employees, people supporting employers and employees are showing up to this.
Mm-hmm. The words embrace what is came to mind the other day. I was passing by a friend who, you know, we were talking over the fence, and she said, you know, how are you doing? I said, well, I'm kind of just embracing what is. And I've gotten to a place of peace with it, of not, and I don't want to confuse that with like complacency or negativity, but this is what it is right now. I'm not going to say, well, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't eat out. It is what it is. So I'm going to embrace the new learnings. using more video conferencing, different ways of doing business, helping others, trying to, think ahead what's to come, and challenging myself to say, well, how can I show up to be of service in a month, 2 months, going back to, this is just so interesting. No one knows what July 1st is going to look like.
Right.
Could we be sitting here in person having tea? I don't know. I hope so, but it is what it is. I'm just embracing what is.
Right. And I think when we look at it as interesting, we look at what can we do with this, we might therefore come up with more ideas that allow us to get to that place where maybe we can be sitting together having tea in a couple of months, or where at least the economy is moving forward, even if our physical challenges and just things that we need to be aware of in this time haven't yet. I mean, I think there's potentially ways for us to really rethink how this economy moves and runs and works. And you're seeing so many retailers go to online that, always thought about it, but never really did. And restaurants are learning new ways. And right now it's really hard and challenging, but maybe this is moving us into a whole new way of understanding and working and learning and growing and building that right now looks like the opposite. But maybe, I hope, in the long run, this is actually just building skills that are going to really help people thrive in the future, and businesses and organizations thrive in the future. We'll see.
Well, it's funny you bring that up too. Something that came to mind in HR is so often companies, and this isn't just some, so many, they don't prepare for, okay, what if there is a pandemic and our workers are out sick? A good opportunity to think about cross-training in positions. Maybe thinking about, okay, if we have a lot of people out, say just even flu season, not during another, hopefully there's not another, but a pandemic time, just like you say, planning ahead, things that you're being forced to do now, but I always say, if you're putting a process in place because something came up, it's going to make sense to spend a little time on it, because chances are you may use it again in a different capacity. And I think a lot of employers are kind of feeling like they're kind of caught unprepared when employees are nervous to come to work, or they're sick and the employer says, I'm not comfortable having you here. All these situations that are forcing them to think creatively and be creative. So, and I love the word creative. And I think people think, well, I'm not creative. I can't create. Every single person is creative. I just read a book by Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic, and it talks about creativity. And I love how she says, don't ever say I'm not a creative person, because you're never going to be able to do anything, because you're going to block it. Every single person has creativity, and you just have to bring it in. And here's a great time to be creative. And I know a lot of people would get blocked, even if I said that, saying, oh, but I can't. Even myself, I've used that word before. I'm just not creative. I don't make my own shirts, or I don't draw, I don't paint, but that's not all that creative is. It's just shifting the thinking. And I say I am a creative person, and it's amazing how that starts putting things in motion.
We've played with the idea that we need a new word, because creativity has become so loaded, and it isn't what it actually means. But that is what people automatically think. And it's so funny, because there are so many ways to be, and that everybody already is creative. Whether you're an accountant, whether you're a CEO, whether you're an artist, whether your creativity has nothing to do with the art supplies. It really doesn't. And so the more we can remember that, and it's a gift that every single human being has, we're born with it. Einstein was creative. Like you look at some of our biggest, even scientific thought leaders, creativity and imagination is what helped them get where they are. And it's times like these, it's the other interesting thing is, historically, it's times like these that launch creativity and innovation to a whole new level. And so there is so much heartache, so much hardship, so much pain in this time. And I don't want to diminish that at all. I'm feeling it. I think so many of us are feeling it, and in some cases directly involved in that. And that is hard. And at the same time, hand in hand is this opportunity, this invitation to look beyond and think beyond and create beyond and make the most of what we've got to work with right now, and just see where it goes.
It's an opportunity.
It is. It is. And it's, there's some people who will push back and say, how can you say that? This is, one of the worst things that's ever happened, and to think like that. And it's not, again, in any way, shape, or form, not recognizing that side of it. But talk to so many people who have found their way through times like this, turn around and at some point are thankful for it, and find that gratitude, back to that gratitude. They wouldn't have learned or gotten to where they got without that experience. And as hard and painful and horrible as it was, or as it is, there's an opportunity there. There's a great movie, I don't think I've mentioned this one before, about what's called the hero's journey. It's the movie is called Finding Joe, and it speaks to this very thing, which is that, it's part of, like, this is again part of the human, as the human resource thing. But the human side is, we have these crazy, sometimes really challenging and difficult experiences, and that's a lot of times where the hero inside of us gets a chance to show up. And it talks to people who've been through things like this, and some of the worst of what's happening in their own lives, in different situations, and how grateful they are for it now because of what happened. And so it's tricky.
I think there's a lot too, like you said, we're not diminishing the fact that there's been losses and there's been heartache and there's been just intense sadness. Yeah. But I think getting away from the idea that thinking of it as opportunity is taking other people's feelings away, saying, well, if I'm going to feel it like it's opportunity or a time of learning, it's taking the sadness in their opportunity to feel the way they want to. And it's not a finite amount of feeling, feeling. And that's why I always say, of course, I can't imagine people that were affected by this in such drastic ways, deaths and extreme sickness, hospitalization. However, saying this is opportunity, I think it's gotten, you see those things out there that say, oh, if you're not writing a book, you're not making the most of this, and let's slow down a little bit there. But it's not a finite amount of feeling. Yeah. You can still take from it all the good things without diminishing those awful pieces that are there.
And I love that you're saying that, because it's the human experience. Mm-hmm. There's the good and the bad and the hard and the and they're all kind of melded together. Sometimes in the same person in the same moment, sometimes in the same group of people, yes, sometimes in the whole. And that's another really powerful place that I think, understanding, accepting, and working with that, we can create some pretty powerful things together, because we lift each other up and we care. Like, that's how we each kind of play our role at different steps along the way for each other, is by all being in those different places at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And if you don't feel the lows, you can't feel the highs. It wouldn't make sense for everything just to be good and great and excellent. There's got to be a balance. This is being human. This is life. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think for me, what I've been working with people on is finding their clarity in this. How do I want to show up to this? How would my very best self be in this situation? And what it does for me personally every day is it reminds me that when I have to go to the grocery store and I'm worried about someone there, or I have to call to, for a business loan or whatever, and I'm on the phone getting busy signals for 5 days in a row, and I just want to scream and pull my hair out. Okay, my best self, the person I want to show up to this as, is gonna okay, it's okay. Like, I understand they have so many people calling. Nobody could have predicted this. I've just gotta keep going. And so, yeah, just really getting in touch with how you as the employee, as you as the contractor, how you as the employer, how you as any of those people want to show up, can be a helpful thing to touch base on day to day. I don't know.
And I know with the human factor, it's not something that we can say, okay, here are all these ideas of gratitude and talking about just really communicating with your people, being really vulnerable. Yeah, I know for myself, it takes almost a daily reset. Like you said, how am I going to frame this when I call somewhere for assistance and I get a busy signal for days, for hours? For me, it's a constant reframe. I try and keep that. Another piece of kind of the employee experience is the positivity. It's not easy. People say, how are you so positive? I'm not positive all the time. I'm constantly reframing because that's what I want in my life. So gosh, during COVID, if anything, it's a daily reframing on how I want to be today. And with kids, with your family, I made a post on LinkedIn the other day and it just says, I'm a homeschool mom, I'm a business owner, I am a cook, I am tired.
Yeah.
However, I'm choosing certain things. I'm choosing to just embrace what is and choosing to embrace the learning, trying not to force things. We will come out of this.
Yeah. Yes.
Attitude and framing. I love the idea of framing things. I look at it too, Kirsten, you said, of how do I want to show up? We have a choice. We always have choices.
Yeah.
And that's just one thing. I think people can take back so much control in their lives if they realize they have a choice in everything. And there'll be people that say, no, I don't. And I'll find 20 choices that they have in those I can't, I don't situations. And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of fun exercise to do with some people that maybe think that they don't have any options, but you have a choice every hour of the day.
Is there a prompt that you use to help people see that? Because I hear that a lot too. In flight camp and other things that I do with teams and groups, I hear, I don't have a choice, or this is the way it is and I can't do anything about it, or whatever it might be. So I'm just gonna stop or do this or do that. And I'm wondering if there's a tool we could share with people when they don't have us there to give them those little nudges or those little ideas or bits of inspiration. Is there a tool you can share? And it's okay if not. I'm trying to think of what mine would be too.
Yeah. So I've kind of practiced this on some people. And so say, they say, well, I have to stay in my job. I can't leave my job. That's kind of one of my favorites. I used to do more career coaching than I do now. And I ask the simple question, why is that?
Yeah.
Well, I live in Park City. I have a mortgage. I like my car. I drive this car. I say, okay, and I want them to go through the list of things, the can'ts, why they can't make a change to their job.
Yeah.
And then we go a little further. I say, okay, so what if you changed houses? And they say, well, I don't want to change houses. I said, okay, well, that would be a choice. So you're crossing that choice off. So I guess in a nutshell, you have to list everything. So if you say, okay, I make so much at my job, I don't want to leave my job because I'd have to sell my house in a really nice area of Park City or wherever it is. And my car, I couldn't leave my job because then I'd have to sell my car.
Yeah.
You need to list all these out. I give the example of just in this area. Okay, if you can't live in Park City, maybe Heber, maybe Salt Lake. Because then, I've talked to people who want to be working for a nonprofit. And they said, but I can't because I couldn't afford my mortgage and my lifestyle. And I said, but that's your choice. You made a choice right there when you said that. So kind of listing, almost going to that point of like worst case scenario. If you have anxiety over something, say, okay, what is it that you're worried on a constant basis about? Let's go there. So these choices, let's just say for fun, you leave your job, you sell your house, you move to Heber because then your mortgage is going to be half. Yeah. And that all of a sudden opens up 15, 20 new job ideas because you no longer have this mortgage. Now, it doesn't always mean leaving your house. Have you ever thought about working for yourself? Oh, I couldn't work for myself. Why not?
Yeah.
What things do you like to do? Let's write them down. Let's do some research. So even just on a daily basis, choosing how you're going to show up.
Yeah.
You see someone on the street, choosing how you're going to greet them, what you're going to say, words, thoughts, actions. Those are things that you can always control. But
I love that. This is a notice more. It's a let go, notice more, and use everything opportunity, right? It's letting go of
absolutely.
what you think things have to be. It's noticing what is possible and playing with those possibilities. And it's using everything. You have so many options available to you all the time if you're willing to play a little and change things up a little and try one or two new things, or in some cases it might be a whole mess of them. I think one of the gifts of this time, at least for me, which has been really interesting, is all this stuff that I thought was so important to not even maintain, but just kids sports and this and like all the stuff that you get caught up in day to day has really shifted. And, you know, if we've got to go live in our RV again and be on the road and sell the house, whatever, it's okay. Like the
Yes.
context has changed so dramatically, and what's important has changed so dramatically for me. Some people I know are feeling the same way, that it kind of makes those why nots or whys a little bit easier to play with than they've been in the past.
Yes, and nothing is permanent. That's another thing I like to talk about with choices, is nothing is permanent. People say, well, yes, it is. Well, like a mortgage.
Yeah.
Kind of. Really, it's not. If you made a list of things that are permanent, you'd be very surprised. You know, apply for the job, get the job. Well, I might not be there in a year. So that's you can make the choice to leave in a year. It's nothing really has to be permanent, and that opens up a lot of choices too. And if you make a choice and it's the wrong one, you're going to have learned, go back to maybe the other one. But if you don't make a choice, if you don't make decisions, you're not going to learn anything. You're never going to grow, and you're going to stay really stuck. So I choose to have choices.
Yeah, I love that. One of my mentors, her big advice to me was, there is no wrong choice. You cannot
Yes.
make a wrong choice. And when she first said that to me, I was just like, you're crazy. Of course I can. I make wrong choices all the time. No, you cannot make a wrong choice. The wrong is not making a choice at all, because to your point, you stay stuck. But when you make a choice, it carries you forward. It's that step again. And when you take that step, you see things from a different place, which allows you to make the next decision with more insight and more knowledge and more awareness. But if you're just constantly in the state of not wanting to choose because you're afraid to make the wrong choice, ironically, you are always making the wrong choice because you're not choosing.
And it's how you're framing too. If you think, well, whenever I make a choice, it's the wrong one.
Yeah.
That's framing it to, it's learning.
It is. It's all learning. So is there any last advice that you would want to share for an employer or an employee, or, you know, anyone, even a self-employed person in this time, that would just be one last little nugget, or maybe even just referencing one we've already talked about that you want to make sure people really take to heart?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things we've said, that there's always a choice, and choose to be grateful, not only in the workplace, just choose the things during kind of tough times like this that you can be grateful for. Choose positivity, make the right choices there, and you'll start like relearning how to do that. One of my favorite quotes, which I thought was pretty applicable here by Maya Angelou, is people will not remember what you said, people will not remember what you did, but they will never forget the way you made them feel. And that, I have it written down, I have it posted in my office, and I just smile whenever I see. I actually saw her on a plane once, so I always think of that moment when I walked on through, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's Maya Angelou. So I just think it's super powerful, because how are you making people feel? Not only, again, and this is transferable, and that's another piece I love to say, is let's learn new things now that we can keep doing. Let's be more grateful. Let's be more positive. Let's communicate more. Let's kind of be more in this together without losing sight, from an HR professional, just not losing sight that certain things you have to have a process for, but not losing sight of the human factor. And again, I really think, Kirsten, this is an opportunity for employers to do a lot of great learning about how to be in the workplace.
Yeah. Even the ones who are having to make really hard decisions, I think this is an opportunity and how you make people feel through that process, how you show up for them through that process. When we can start bringing things back together, how you show up to that. And I love the Maya Angelou bringing that into this. I mean, I love her, period. But I think that is another aha nugget today.
There was one thing I forgot to add that you actually just jogged my memory.
Yeah.
I also would love to be reminding people, employers at the end of this, have people look back and say they were that employer in a good way. That employer stood up during this. They did everything they could. They communicated. They were grateful for us. They treated us right. They respected us. And employees, be that employee that in the end of this pandemic, employers are saying, hey, Joe, I got to hand it to you. The way you had a great attitude, you carried your coworkers. You're going to be with us for a while. So be that employer, be that employee that people are going to remember after this.
Oh, Jill, those are so good. That is so good. I am so thankful to have you here today and so excited to share this with everyone, and hoping you'll come back and we can explore and play more together in the future. And if anything else comes to mind that you want to share with people, please let us know, and we'll make sure that we're doing that either through another podcast, or we can share your stuff on social media and stuff, just to make sure that we are being a good resource for everybody. So thank you.
That's awesome. Well, it was totally my pleasure. This was a blast. Thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you. If you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe.
And definitely share it with all your friends.
Heck yeah. We can all use more play and creativity in our lives.
Yes, especially with our friends.
Yes. And check us out on social media. We're at Rocket Trike Studios. We'd love to have you join us there.